everybody, and thank you for joining us here on Facebook Live at the Spanish Fork Library. I am Chef Allie, and today we have a really fun and exciting lesson for you today. So it's towards the end of the season. We're getting into harvest time. But right before harvest time in September, you have this abundance of vegetables and good green things that you don't know what to do with. And if you garden like I do, I am an avid gardener and I like to eat everything from my garden to table kind of eating. I have chickens, everything. And you just have a lot of stuff in that garden that you couldn't possibly eat all yourself by the time it's ready to go. Like tons of tomatoes and peppers and greens and all kinds of things like that. So I want to show you a couple things that you can do with a lot of vegetables that can be tasty, and none of this has to be cooked, by the way. So super easy, and sometimes incorporating vegetables can be a mystery because people don't really like some vegetables and they're not sure what to do. Like, what do you do with a bunch of kale, you know? So one of the principles I want to teach you today is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a fancy dish or prepared in a specific way or think up a whole side dish for one vegetable, but it's just a matter of how you cut the vegetable, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is make a yummy Mediterranean veggie wrap. And what I mean by how you cut the vegetable is basically just that. Nice thin ribbons will create a delicious crispy texture, but that's also not too chunky or too hard. For instance, you take a carrot and you're thinking in your head, a carrot is hard and chunky. I could never add that to a sandwich, but all you have to do is shave the carrot, and then you can use a julienne peeler, or you can just use your peeler and continue to shave until you get these nice thin ribbons. I happen to have a julienne peeler. You can get them anywhere. You can get them online. You can, Walmart has them. You can also get them from Pampered Chef, but it just has these little teeth that go up, and you just scrape it across your vegetable, and it gives you these beautiful, skinny little wiggly ribbons that are absolutely perfect for a veggie wrap. So firstly, I'm gonna shave us some of these carrot ribbons. These are gonna go into our wrap. It's gonna be so good. I love to eat vegetables any which way, so I'm not a picky eater, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who are very particular about how they eat their vegetables, which is understandable. They're not as delicious as, like, you know, cheese, meat, butter, cream, those kinds of things. But we can't eat that all the time, can we? Because then it will become extremely unhealthy. So we have our carrots in these beautiful little ribbons. Now the other thing I'm going to add is some of these little babies. Everybody knows we have a bumper crop of these at the end of the season. So we have a yellow summer squash and we have a zucchini. Now, because they're cheap and plentiful, we don't have to feel bad about a little bit of waste. Usually I never waste. I either throw things into a broth or something like that. But with these, you can afford a little waste because the center of them is really pithy, and when cooked gets really mushy. So it's not very pleasant to eat, and there's not a whole lot you can do with that. So what I like to do is I can use the julienne peeler again, and I just like to get the nice part that's a little bit al dente, which is the skin. And here we have our little ribbons. It has the full flavor of the cucumber. It has the full benefit, or not cucumber, but zucchini. It has the full benefit of the zucchini, and it's still a pleasant texture. You can also do this with a chef's knife. It just takes a little bit of skill if you're not used to chopping things in tiny julienne pieces, but I will give you an example of how you can do that. Okay, so if I were to do this with a chef's knife, first of all, always choke up on your knife. So you can hold it here, which is not as safe as holding it here, because you have more control over the knife. And you're going to cut off the ends going to just slice off the very edge of the squash, okay? And then you're going to tuck your fingers. If you tuck your fingers and your thumb, you'll never cut your finger because you just can't. You bonk into your knuckle first. And then you just go along. Boop, 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 boop. And then you have, again, these little ribbon type things. And you can be super precise about that or not, depending on how much time you have, really. And none of us really have a lot of time. So, all right. So I'm going to get rid of that. So we have our squash, we have carrots. Another thing that I love to put in there is some peppers. And we're going to go ahead and julienne these as well. So when I break down a pepper, I like to break it down in a specific way because it's fast and it's functional. So you're going to cut off the bottom and you're going to cut off the top. Set that aside, we can use it later. And you're just going to set it on its side here, and you're going to, you can see that there's a little rib inside the pepper. And you don't want that part. It's pithy, it has no flavor, it has no texture. So you're going to slice off, leaving that rib on the center of the pepper. And again, the next side, and again, and lastly. And so there you have taken out the center of the pepper, and all you have is the good flesh of the pepper left. Now, if you were in a fancy restaurant, you'd be very precise about this, and you would shave the top of the pepper so that you could have perfectly even cuts. But at home, we don't have to worry about that, and we don't want to waste. So just take your cheek of pepper, again, tuck your fingers, and run along. All right, so here we have some beautiful julienne peppers. Those look delicious. They are delicious. The more color you can add into your diet, the more nutrition you're adding into your diet. So you want to have a big variety. All right, and just to show you really quick, you can also utilize those ends that you cut off. Just cut those julienne, boop, 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 or you can chop them and use them later for a salsa or for some kind of a sauce or in a hash or anything like that. And you can do the same, just pop out the stem and then cut up what's left. So there's no need to waste certain parts of the vegetable. Especially these beautiful colored peppers, they're kind of expensive in the store, so I like to utilize those to the best that I can. Okay. And remember, folks, sharp knives are essential because it's actually less safe to use a dull knife. It's more likely that the knife will slip and that you will cut yourself or something else you don't want to cut. Like your dog that's standing nearby, or your child. Okay. So now we have some julienne peppers. They look really pretty. Okay, next we're going to use some beautiful tomatoes. And these tomatoes are from my garden. All of these tomatoes are from my garden. And they're gorgeous, and there's just a ton of them right now. But I want a good flavor pop, so I'm going to use cherry tomatoes because nothing flavor pops like a ripe cherry tomato. It's just like a little gusher of sweet deliciousness. And I have these Italian yellow pear tomatoes, and I'm just going to cut them in half. The other way you can do it, especially if you don't mind getting splattered a little bit with juice, is just squish them in your fingers. Just go squash, and they're just as good. Okay, a couple of those. One more for the road. All right, and next we're going to add some cucumber. And I actually had a beautiful cucumber to bring from my garden, but we ate it. Sorry, it was good. I like getting the hothouse cucumbers for things like sandwiches and stuff because they stay really crisp and you don't have to shave off the skin, which makes it very convenient. The skin is very tender and doesn't have a lot of cellulose in it, what makes it hard and snappy. So it's very easy to use. And I'm going to go ahead and julienne these as well. So I'm going to cut off the end. And I'm just going to slice these into little panels. And with this kind of cucumber, you can use all the panels. If it was a different species of cucumber that was really juicy and seedy in the center, I wouldn't use the center. I'd probably cut that out because it's just kind of globby and juicy and kind of weird. But this is crunchy all the way through, so it's perfect to use on something like this. So just julienne these. Julienne, again, just means long, tiny, thin strings. Okay. Here's some more. All right. Excellent. And now we're going to be using some lettuce in our wrap, but also some cilantro, which is one of my favorite herbs. In case you didn't know, cilantro and coriander are the same thing. So overseas, they usually call it coriander, like in Europe and in India. But cilantro is the South American word for this herb. And you can use the herb, which is the leafy part, and you can also use the seeds, which are delicious little round, they look like just like a little ball. You can get it powdered, you can get it whole, and it's used in a lot of Indian cooking. It's really delicious. So if you see coriander or cilantro, that's the same thing. Okay. All right, I think we have, oh, there's one more thing I want to add, and that's a mushroom. Because I love mushrooms. They're so tasty, and they really take the place, especially in vegetarian kind of things that you're doing, they take the place of meat. Now, if I had a hot plate here or something like that, we could saute them up, which could be a nice little hot component to the sandwich, but you really don't need that. You can just cut them up. So cut them thin, nice and thin. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn them flat and then julienne them so that they're being little straws. A large mushroom would be easier for this, but we can use this little guy. It's going to be just fine. Another component that we'll be using in this particular wrap, because it is a Mediterranean wrap, is some Kalamata olives. Kalamata olives are a delicious Greek olive that's black, but instead of just that typical salty kind of nondescript flavor that canned black olives have, Kalamata olives have a delicious briny flavor and a very strong olive aftertaste and smell to them. Or bouquet, if you want to get fancy. Okay. So we prepped all of our items. And the next thing we're going to use for this is something that I did prepare in advance. You can also purchase it, which is why I didn't mind preparing it in advance, because I felt like this is probably something that most people would buy, even though it's the easiest thing to make by yourself, is hummus. So I have some hummus that I made in advance, and I'm telling you guys, hummus is kind of expensive in the store. It is so cheap to make at home. It's just a can of chickpeas, some lemon, some cumin, some salt and pepper, a little bit of sesame seed if you don't have tahini, blend it up, garlic, blend it up. That's it, hummus. It's nothing magical at all. So I have my hummus, I have my wrap. And I'm first going to spread some delicious hummus onto my wrap. And I kind of want to cover the entire wrap. I guess I can call it a tortilla. But thinly. You don't want it to get too gloppy. Otherwise, it's just not quite as pleasant. And then the hummus flavor will overpower all the good vegetables that you're putting into it. Okay, the other thing that's going into this Mediterranean wrap is some feta cheese. And let me just tell you, folks, if you like to use the, like just regular President's feta or whatever, don't do it, I beg of you. You need to get some authentic Greek feta because the flavor difference is like night and day. Night and day. This is made out of sheep's milk, which has a totally different flavor than the ones made out of cow's milk. And it should be in brine. So instead of those little dry crumbles that you get or whatever, real feta should be sitting in brine. And that's how it should be kept. And I'm gonna go ahead and slice this in the box. And it is so delicious. It has such a softer texture, and the flavor is incomparable. I mean, it is really, really good flavor. So, actually, I'm gonna grab that and just kind of cut it up a little bit. Now, feta is very salty and very flavorful. So you want to, don't go gangbusters on the feta. Just put enough in that it flavors all of the good vegetables that you're gonna put in. All right, and now our beautiful olives. These ones happen to be already cut up for me, but if you get pitted Kalamata olives, the best hack in the book is just grab the olive and squish it in your thumb and forefinger. That's what I do on pizza. That's what I do for everything. Because who has time to sit there with each olive and be like, beep, 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 next olive, beep, beep, beep. No, sir. So either get them pre-sliced, which is a little bit of a flavor loss when you do that, or just squish them in your fingers. And they're just as good. All right. So this is kind of our meat. The olives, the cheese, the mushrooms. That is where that nice, salty, briny, umami flavor comes from. So you know that we have sour, we have sweet, we have salty, we have bitter. We also have umami, which is that particular flavor of meatiness. So when you think of like eating ramen or biting into a steak, it's that flavor, umami. And now we're gonna put in our veggies. So we have squash, zucchini, peppers. Oh my goodness, it's already looking so good. And it's so beautiful too. There's so many colors in here. Carrots, our lovely, flavorful tomatoes. Another thing you can do with a tomato, I think I mentioned this before, if you don't have any cherry tomatoes, just get a nice ripe one and cut off the top, and then just take it in your hand and squish it. And the good juice and the meat comes out of it, and then you have the skin of the tomato left in your hand. You just toss that. Okay, and a little bit of cilantro. Okay. All right, beautiful. And now, we're also going to just add a little salt and pepper. Every sandwich needs a little dash of salt and pepper. So this is a salt-pepper blend. And I use sea salt, always. And then lastly, oh, I forgot to put my cucumbers on, didn't I? Ho, 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 thought you'd get the better of me, huh, cucumber? Not getting out of this one. All right, and then lastly, we're gonna just add a little bit of lettuce, because every sandwich needs lettuce on it. It's gonna be fresh and crispy. Ooh, this looks so good. Okay, so now I'm gonna take my wrap. I'm gonna bend it over, pull it in, and then I'm going to fold up the base of it. So pull it in, fold up the base, and then continue over. Now, you could do it burrito style if you want and fold in both sides. That's totally fine. And then continue it over, and voila. And And then slice. Doesn't that look good? It's colorful, it's beautiful, it's flavorful, and whoever is here tonight gets to try it if they want to. So, we have a sandwich, if you'd like to try. Here's a paper towel if anyone needs it. There, I can cut it into smaller pieces and you might be more likely to try that. Okay. All right, fabulous. So that is our veggie wrap, our Mediterranean veggie wrap. Now, the second one we're going to make is something that can be made almost any time of year, but is best when the avocados are in season, is an avocado toast. So the thing that I like about this is I'm gonna make a component of the avocado toast that you can use on a lot of other things, and that's the spread or the schmear or whatever you want to call it. And that is totally vegan and delicious, and it's made out of cashews. The reason why I like this particular spread is because you really can use it on everything. I use it to make kale chips, which I'll talk about in just a second.